Oh, Yao, you made a friend.
Alright, here we are, another challenge. Today I am starting at 10 a.m. or 10:02 a.m.
You're late.
And I'm gonna try to get it in less than 11 hours this time. Past, I've been getting it in less than 12 hours, but today we're gonna shoot for 11. So I'm gonna try to still finish it before 9 a.m. 9
You're
p.m.
crazy.
And let's see if I can do it. Let's get started. Here we go.
Quick start. Straight to business. I like that.
She couldn't understand why nobody else could see that the sky is full of cotton candy.
I
This
love
is actually
cotton
a cool
candy.
one. She's a dreamer. The sky is
Haven't
full of
eaten
cotton
it
candy, clouds,
in a while,
pink.
though.
I'm gonna start jotting down notes.
Not
and
readily
we'll
available.
see what I come up with. Hopefully I can get 3 characters, their wants, needs, why they can't get what they want, and what's their plan to get what they want. Hopefully I can get that before 12, and then some rudimentary act outs that I want to hit. So my goal is to get those points done before 12. Let's see if I can do it.
Let's see if you can do it.
And let's get to writing.
Alright, guess it's my turn to talk again. And the sentence has cotton candy in it, so we're gonna go off of cotton candy facts. I haven't Googled anything yet, so we're just gonna have to wait until the next writing spree. He's almost done though.
Alright, so I've got a beat sheet pretty much down. I'm doing this a little differently. I usually do 5 acts, but I wanted to do this particular story in 3 parts.
Change it up.
Based around how the main character holds herself in each part. So the first part is about Martha, the main character, and the first part is her looking down. The second part is her looking straight, and then the third part is her looking up, and that kind of ties into the sentence. She couldn't understand why nobody else could see the sky is full of cotton candy, and I'm kind of playing on the wonder of her finally being able to look up in the sky and her seeing clouds and a sunset for the first time and it looking like cotton candy, and that sort of amazement that comes from her living a life of always having to look down. And then part 3 is her finally looking up, and this is kind of what launches us into the story of what the season or the show could possibly be, which is her going against what she was brought up as, and her abuse, being forced to look down and being forced to not really experience the world as it is. Just going off that's why I broke it up into 3 parts, because I wanted the 3 parts to kind of be her journey and her stages into getting to being able to look up into the sky and seeing this like amazing clouds that look like cotton candy. That's why I'm not going with the 5 acts, because I wanted to structure this in a way where it's interesting not only to the viewer and they can see it parceled up between the 3 acts, but also so we get kind of an idea of her journey from looking down to being able to look up and kind of being free from the restraints that she was given as a child. So like I usually do, I'm going to move this over to Final Draft, get a more detailed outline, put some slug lines in, and we're at 11:20, so we're making pretty good time. I could probably finish this up before 12 and then eat a little bit and get to writing. And hopefully breaking this up into 3 parts will hopefully make me move faster, because sometimes when I'm dealing with 5 acts, I'll finish an act, then take a break for a while, and mentally when you finish an act, I feel like it's kind of difficult to keep slogging through. So hopefully with only 3 parts, I can finish 1 part faster than I could finish, say, 2 acts. So here we go, on to outlining.
Alright, so cotton candy fact number 1. It was co-created by a dentist and a candy maker. The dentist named Dr. William Morrison and a candy maker named John C. Horton. Both sound like lovely people who gave us yummy invention.
All right, done with outlining.
Thank God.
A little past 12, but before 12:30, which is good. I'm gonna take a break right now to eat lunch.
What's for lunch?
I don't know.
My God.
And so we have our 3 parts. Part 1 and 2 are about the same size, and then part 3 is shorter. And I always like keeping either the later acts or the later parts shorter in order to increase the tension and kind of get us rolling into the big climax, and keeping the time after the climax real short so we aren't dragged on by the story. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a break, and then we are getting to writing part 1.
Alright, so I guess we're going to do a little bit of trivia right now. Instead of me just telling you the facts, we're going to go ahead and guess, because this guy's writing for a long time now. So what do they call cotton candy in Australia? Is it A, Daddy's beard, B, fairy floss, C, dragon's beard, or D, sugar spider? I don't even remember the choices, but it was fairy floss, if I did in fact say Australia in the beginning. France cotton candy is known as Daddy's beard. China, it is known as dragon's beard. And in Netherlands, it's called sugar spider. Out of all of those, I don't know which one is my favorite. I'd say cotton candy is probably the least unique out of those. I like sugar spider. I'd eat me a sugar spider. Oh man, this guy's taking a long time. Aren't many fun facts about cotton candy. Whew. Jeez.
Finally done with part 1.
Finally.
So third of the way through, and
I have to do this 3 more
almost
times.
5 p.m. So not great, but I always say that at the end of Act 1 and 2, it's always not great. But we are on page 27, done with part 1. Moving on to part 2, should be around a little less than part 1, probably 15-ish pages. Hopefully I can get that done before 7. Again, the goal is to finish before 9 so I can hit the lower than 11-hour mark, because my past few challenges have been below 12 hours but still past 11 hours, so they've been like 11 hours and 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to break that 11-hour mark.
Break it.
So here we go.
Bend it.
We have
Destroy it.
4 hours, 5 to 9, 4 hours
4
to
hours,
get
that's
this done.
not a lot of time.
And here we go.
Here we go. And it's back to me. I got one more piece of fun fact for you. Apparently, December 7th is National Cotton Candy Day. Does anyone else know what December 7th is? It is the day that Pearl Harbor was attacked. That's a little unfortunate. Cotton candy and Pearl Harbor on the same day. Come on, write faster.
All right,
yes.
done with part 2. That was actually not as bad as I thought. I thought I was shooting for 7. Thought I was going to be way over 7, but got to 712,
Way over 7.
which is pretty good. Page count, we're doing pretty good as well. 47 pages.
Let's go.
In at the end of part 2, and the story is going how I planned it. I think this one is turning out rather well. I did have one aspect that I wanted to kind of play out in the beginning. I wanted the dialogue to rhyme and sort of to have like a poetic flow to it,
No
which
way.
I thought kind of went with the 3 parts, and the themes of the 3 parts kind of have a poetic flow, so I wanted the dialogue to have a poetic flow. Coming up with rhyming dialogue takes a long time, and after pretty much the first scene, I gave up on it just because it would have taken way too long, and I didn't have that much time to devote my brain power to rhyming every piece of dialogue.
Because you ain't Dr.
So there is a
Seuss.
narrator who does rhyme, and hopefully if I get back into this, I can decide if I still want to rhyme and go through all the dialogue and change that up. But now on to part 3, which is shorter. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 scenes, and we're on page 48. This might be one of the longer ones I've written in a while. And let's get to it. Part 3, finished by 9. I think that's pretty doable.
So there actually is some more cotton candy facts. Cotton candy, despite being just sugar, has less sugar than a 12-ounce can of soda. So if you're choosing between the two, eat cotton candy. Oh,
Time!
kind of sick.
It is 8:12 p.m. That is less than 11 hours, 10 hours and 12 minutes.
You're
That
huge.
is pretty good. That is a lot better than I thought. I didn't break for dinner yet. I just pushed through Act 3.
You're a
I'm pretty
beast.
hungry
You're a god
and pretty stoked.
among men.
We ended on page 56, which is a good page count as well. I always try to get at least 50 pages for these challenges, which is hard to hit sometimes. These 3 parts actually worked really well, and I liked the structure of it, and it
would've
worked
thought?
well for the challenge too, because it felt like I needed to finish more in order to take a break, because shorter acts, it feels like whenever you finish an act, you're like, oh, fine, I can take a break. But now with 3 parts, I had to slog through the parts and really get to the end of it. So this is good. This definitely deserves what you're all been waiting for.
Thank God we're whipping this a little strobe action. A little head banging action. Harder. Yeah. Nice.
Good stuff. I'll hit you in a little bit with the overviews.
Hit me with it.
Bam.
It's part 1, not act 1.
So just starting off with the general plot, based off the sentence, she couldn't understand why nobody else could see that the sky is full of cotton candy. Seeing the sky is full of cotton candy, I'm imagining clouds and a sunset that's like pink and orange and kind of bouncing off these rolling clouds. And seeing it as cotton candy is such like a childish thing. And it's kind of reminds me of like childhood wonder of how you can look up at the sky and appreciate it, but also think like that looks like cotton candy. And playing off that idea of that being a childish thing, so I wanted to play with a person who hadn't seen this that often. By thinking about that, I thought about what person could be like that, what the story could be about. So I came up with this girl who was human trafficked as a kid and basically was sold and is living a life of submission basically, and she has to keep her head down all the time. And so that's where I kind of came up with the 3 parts as well. I wanted the first part to be Martha has her head down, which is here, Martha looks down, and then part 2 is Martha looks straight, and then the last part is Martha looks up. And in the final scene, or the final kind of moment, Martha finally looks up and there's a sunset and we see the clouds and they're beautiful, and she said it looks like cotton candy because she's lived her whole life with her head down, which is also physical, but kind of a metaphor for how she's been treated and she's been kind of abused by the people she's, had to live with, and she's been human trafficked and all this stuff. So the pilot is about human trafficking. And when I first started, I had 3 main characters, that, like I always do. I had Martha, the main character. So I came up with her wants, needs. Her wants to bring justice to the world, and her need is to be free. I needed a antagonist for her, so I came up with her mother, who I ended up just calling Mother. Came up with the wants and needs for her, and then
Original.
the third character would be
Creative.
a police officer who would help Martha when she's an
Is she
adult.
named
And I wanted
police
to
officer?
start the story off when Martha's a kid, so we get kind of a idea of how she started out, and then introducing the police officer in the second part, and in order to have some help for Martha. So those are my 3 characters that I came up with first, and then just going into what the first part consisted of. Like I mentioned before, when I started off, I kind of wanted to have this poetic theme going on, and the 3 parts to me, Martha looks down, Martha looks straight, Martha looks up, had this poetic flow. So I wanted to kind of play with the dialogue, rhyme, and kind of be poetic. And I had just watched the animated short There's a Man in the Woods, and that rhymes and it's very poetic. The flow is very natural, and that's one of my favorite pieces of work of all time, and I think it's just masterfully done. So I wanted to kind of try that out, but I realized after doing the first scene that it was going to take way too much time, so I quickly stopped that. But if you read right here, like, Mother says, little girls who complain are in utter pain to their mother or father who bother to feed them. Know your place and keep in your lane. It's like just like that.
He knows how to
trying
rhyme.
to make it rhyme, trying to make everyone poetic. Martha responds with, yes, Mother, but can we get something other than that? Jenny says at the store to the core is truthful no more, and steak is nothing but rat.
Rap God.
Probably those lines took me like 10 minutes each, so
That's
not
pretty
great
bad.
for speed challenges. So just the structure of the first part, I wanted to have Martha, obviously the first part is called Martha Looks Down, so I wanted to have her as a child and her mother enforcing upon these rules where she has to look down, and then it jumps to, I think, 15 years later to when Martha's grown up and she's been sold to her now husband, and he enforces the same rules of her to keep her head down in order to keep her in submission. So like I said, we open with Martha as a young girl, her with her mother. Her mother is struggling financially. They are in the 99-cent store buying discount meat. In the store, Martha saves a girl from being kidnapped. The kidnappers follow them home and demand that they give up the girl. Mother convinces Martha that this person actually is the girl's father, so then Martha gives her up. Mother collects money for the girl, and we see that in the next scene when Mother we skip a little bit of time, and Mother comes back with dressed in designer clothing. Martha doesn't know where she got the money from, and then
Suspicious.
we go back to a luxury grocery store. I said a la Whole Foods or something.
Whole Foods,
And,
the height of luxury.
just showing that Mother has money now, miraculously somehow. And we figure out that Mother has been, aiding with this child trafficking scheme. So Martha catches Mother trying to kidnap a child. Martha exposes Mother in front of the store clerks, and so Mother has to let it go. And then we have the kidnappers come to Mother and Martha's house. They demand a child. Mother says the plan was messed up, she doesn't have one, and they said we're not leaving until we have one. So Mother has to give Martha up and collect money for Martha. So Martha's given up. Mother basically sells her. Then we time jump 15 years to when Martha is now sold to this husband who is basically similar to Mother except a bit more abusive. We jump to Martha's birthday, and her one birthday is to go back to the store. The husband brings Martha to the store. Because she's looking down, she ends up bumping into a bunch of people and kind of causing havoc. So husband gets embarrassed, brings her out, starts physically harming her in an alleyway, and that's when we introduce the police officer, who I called Officer Miranda Morgan. And Officer Miranda saves Martha and locks the husband in jail. Martha ends up posting bail. I wanted Martha to kind of still be attached to husband, as some abuse victims are still attached to their abuser. So Martha bails her out. The officer can't really help, and Martha and husband go home. The husband is berating her vocally, and then so Martha sneaks out and goes back to the police officer, and for the first time the police officer kind of lifts her chin, and Martha is able to look up, and it's the police officer's friendship that kind of allows Martha to stop from looking down. And that's how we launch into part 2, where Martha is now looking straight and her life is changing. So now we have part 2, Martha looks straight.
You.
So we begin with Martha looking straight. The husband is furious that she's doing this, and it's kind of an act of rebellion against him. Martha refuses to look back down, and then husband says, if you're going to be rebellious, then you have to make money for this family, which is kind of a non sequitur, but it kind of made sense to me, and it moved the story along. So Martha goes to a park in her enjoyment of now being able to see things and not having to look down. You know, she sees trees and children playing. She watches children playing. She ends up playing soccer with them, and the parents see that Martha is so good with children because she has childlike qualities and she has a childlike outlook on the world. So the moms end up asking Martha to babysit the kids so that the moms can have more free time and don't have to watch the kids at the park. So then Martha becomes their babysitter, and that's kind of her job, and how she, gets money. Martha goes back to home, tries to tell the husband about the kids. Husband doesn't want to hear it. And then we see Martha building relationships with the kids. One is named Eddie and one is named Jimmy. One night, Eddie's parents are late, so it's him and Martha are sitting on a bench. Eddie's looking up at the stars, and he starts talking about how beautiful the stars are and how the stars look outside of the city. And Martha says she's never looked at the stars, and then Eddie says, well, you could look at them right now, and Martha can't. So there's still like a mental and physical block that we're adding in. And
couldn't she just see
even
the
though
sky
she
anyway?
can still look around, there's still that metaphor of she's still being kept under submission by something, and she's still not free yet. So she gets home from that late night. The mother finally picks up Eddie. She goes home. Husband is furious that she's late and hasn't made dinner. And then Martha tells the husband about the job. He doesn't believe her, so he comes with her the next day, and he sees the children, and he kidnaps one. He kidnaps Eddie. Everyone freaks out. Martha's obviously distraught. She goes home, finds out that Eddie is being held there. She tries to free him. The husband beats her and restrains her, and then she sees Eddie being sold. At the end of part 2, Martha goes back to the police station, and this time it's the police officer Miranda who's beating herself up because she was in charge of this human trafficking case. So she's beating herself up that another kid got stolen, and Martha comes to her and kind of brings her head up, and now Martha is the one consoling her. At the end of part 2, we don't have Martha looking up as we did at the end of Act 1, just because I wanted Martha to be looking up at the end of part 3.
Part 3, not Act 3.
So Martha meeting with Officer Miranda is how we end part 2, which propels us into part 3, where Martha's at the park. There's now a lot less kids because people don't trust Martha, and kids are missing, so they're keeping them at home. Martha goes home. Husband demands that they kidnap another kid because Eddie made him so much money after he kidnapped Eddie. He got $50,000. So he demands that Martha bring home another kid. Martha refuses. At the park, her and Jimmy, one of the only kids left, are playing. Husband comes and kidnaps Jimmy. Martha instantly goes home and grabs a cast iron pan, hits husband over the head,
Boom.
and frees Jimmy. But the kidnappers, the human traffickers, come. They demand something, so husband basically has to sell Martha, So we're kind of in a circle. We're back where we started. Martha's being sold in lieu of a plan that she pretty much ruined, but she also is helping the kids. So we're back at square one, basically, or so we think. Martha gets taken by the human traffickers. She gets put in a warehouse. She gets put in a cell that is next to Eddie's cell. Luckily, Eddie is still alive in there, which is what she was banking on. And so she's able to talk to Eddie, and we realize that Martha is wearing a tracking device. So her and Officer Miranda have been planning this all along. Officer Miranda comes in. There's a little shootout between the human traffickers and the police. Martha is able to save Eddie. They leave the warehouse into a beautiful sunset. Eddie is the one who mentioned the stars earlier, so he says, look up at this beautiful sunset. Martha is finally able to look up after she broke basically from the cycle, and she's not going in a circle anymore, and she's the one who changed her fate and is able to break free. She finally looks up, sees this beautiful sunset, says it looks like cotton candy, bringing back that childlike wonder, and that's what we've been building up to all episode, the whole pilot. And then I had a little kind of tag at the end of part 3 where she returns home and her mother is there. I was gonna end it on Martha looking up in kind of this holy moment, but it is a pilot episode, so we need something that drags the viewer into the second episode. So I had Mother come in at the end. We haven't seen her since she sold Martha as a kid, and Mother's there, and we're wondering now what. So that was part 2 and part 3. Overall, I like the 3 parts. I think that really worked for the story specifically. Part 1, middle of part 1 is the same as the middle of part 3. Martha getting kidnapped, basically getting sold because she saved a child, and she's being sold in lieu of that child. I do like that, bringing what was in the first part to the third part, but now having Martha having the agency and facilities to break free and kind of carve her own justice and her own destiny from that. I do enjoy having the narrator talk in like a poetic rhyme. I think that's fun. I don't know about having the whole thing as a poetic rhyme. I think that might be a little much. But the first scene that I wrote as a rhyme, you can read it below. I like, and I think it's fun for sure, but it just took way too much time. Some things I would change. I would add more about Police Officer Miranda. I think she's an interesting character. I had a brief scene of her and her daughter, and I think that's the key B story right now, so I would add a couple more, maybe 2 or 3 more scenes with her and her past and kind of what she's up to. Oh, another kind of thing that doesn't make sense is we don't know what happens to the husband at the end of part 3, so I'd probably clear that up a little bit. I'd definitely touch up the relationships between Eddie, Jimmy, and Martha, so the 2 main boys that she babysits. I think their relationship is really important, and especially Eddie's and Martha's relationship is really important, and I think they could be really good friends, and that friendship could be a fun thing to explore. I definitely do have reservations about writing about domestic abuse, especially because it can be extremely triggering for some people, and I haven't personally lived through it, so I do have reservations writing about that. But then again, it's just a story, and it was just something that I wanted to write. And I don't agree with glorifying violence or domestic abuse or anything like that. But I think making a character who grew up with that, and she's taking it upon herself to break free while still harboring the past that she had to live through is interesting. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you for watching again.
You're welcome.
If anyone is watching.
I am.
And until next time,
let's do it.